You think you know your wife, until the house you built together starts keeping secrets from you. I didn't plan to spy on Lisa, but when the laughter stopped and the silence got heavy, I had to know what filled it. The hidden cameras were small, no bigger than a button, but they saw everything I didn't. Tuesday, 2:15 p.m. My phone buzzed. On that tiny screen, I saw her walk in, and a man follow right behind her. 40 years of honor shattered in 15 seconds. My heartbeat sounded louder than the recording itself. The coffee went cold. The air in the room turned thick, like breathing through wet concrete. I wish I could tell you it ended there. It didn't. If you've ever felt your world collapse in silence, hit subscribe and stay with me. Because what came next changed more than my marriage. It changed me. I grew up under brisket smoke and mower lines in the yard. Sundays were church and handshakes that meant something. Friday nights, metal bleachers, breath showing in the lights, the band beating out the town's pulse. My parents punched clocks and kept their heads down. Knuckles split, bills paid, no speeches. From them I learned the math of a decent man. Show up, tell the truth, don't flinch. At 18, I pinned on a Texas State Trooper badge. It felt heavier than it looked, and it taught me to carry weight without complaint. Protect first, rest later, I told myself. Over years, that promise hardened into habit, then into backbone. Miles, wrecks avoided, folks getting home safe. Honor wasn't a word. It was where you parked the cruiser, the yes ma'am you meant, the temper you kept holstered. Plano raised me steady, square, predictable as sunrise. That steadiness built fences. It kept the bad out, but it also kept me from noticing small changes, the kind that whisper before they shout. I thought discipline would save me from surprises. I didn't know it could blind me to warnings living right in my own house. And then, at a community cookout I almost skipped, I heard a woman's laugh slice through the noise like a cold beer on a hot day, clean, direct, impossible to ignore. That sound turned my head, and the rest of my life followed. It was the kind of cookout every town knows. Paper plates sagging under beans, kids zigzagging between lawn chairs, someone bragging about a perfect brisket. I was sunburned, smelling like mesquite, off-duty and grateful for it. Then she laughed, bright and unforced, and the chatter around me thinned. She wore a simple blue dress, hair tucked behind one ear, eyes steady. We talked like we already had practice. Her classroom, my patrol, the way people show who they are when they think no one's looking. She slid her number across on a napkin, a dare wrapped in neat handwriting. A few nights later, we met at Portal Cafe, burnt coffee, cherry pie, a ripped vinyl booth that squeaked when you leaned in. We traded small stories that felt big. When her hand brushed mine, the room got quiet in a way I liked. I didn't have a ring when I asked. I had a promise I believed in. She said yes, and the air changed. It wasn't fireworks. It was a door opening and the temperature shifting, like the first cold snap after a Texas summer. I told myself love plus good intentions could carry any weight. What I couldn't hear, over the applause in my own head, was the first soft tick of a clock we'd both ignore, the one that turns comfort into silence and silence into distance. We started in a small house at the end of a cul-de-sac, the kind with mailboxes leaning a little and kids chalking the pavement until supper. The living room had a second-hand couch and a fan that ticked like a slow clock. Weeknights smelled like charcoal and cheap barbecue sauce. Saturdays were for trimming hedges and patching what needed patching. I took the early shifts, out before sunrise, back with road dust on my boots. Lisa ironed blouses and graded papers at the kitchen table, red pen tapping when she got tired. We learned how to stretch a paycheck without stretching our tempers. Neighbors waved, doors stayed unlocked. If we borrowed a ladder, we brought it back cleaner than we found it. That life fit like well-worn denim. Routine was our safety net. Bills stacked, laundry folded, hands held in church. We didn't chase big, just solid. I measured success by full gas tanks and quiet evenings. She measured it by kids who could read and parents who finally exhaled at pickup. We weren't rich, but we never ran short on respect. That mattered to me more than anything with a price tag. I thought a roof, a ring, and a steady spine were enough to carry us forever. Then we painted a spare room pale blue and started saying names out loud. First Mark, then Emily. and the house got smaller in a way that made our hearts feel bigger. I rolled a drop cloth over the nursery carpet and cracked a can of paint that smelled like hope. We taped a crooked line around the room and pretended it was straight. I drew stars above the crib with a trembling hand, then sanded them smooth so no one would snag a sleeve. Nights came heavy and long. The baby monitor hissed. Bottles steamed. I learned to rock in silence, count breaths, and change a diaper by the glow of a hallway nightlight. Lisa would fall asleep in the chair with Mark tucked under her chin, his tiny fists resting like a truce. Emily arrived later, and the house learned a new rhythm. 2 cries, 2 lullabies, twice the mess, and twice the meaning. I picked up extra shifts and stopped counting overtime. The radio on my belt squawked while a bottle warmed in my hand, and I felt the pull of 2 worlds, the road that took me away and the small faces that made coming back feel holy. Car seats, pediatric visits, bills layered like shingles. I carried them all and told myself the weight belonged on my shoulders. The tired was honest, the purpose was clean. And somewhere between a midnight fever and a dawn patrol, it hit me like a clean punch to the chest. This is the job, not the badge, not the salute. That's when I understood what it means to protect. And once you understand it, you start paying for it. In time, in pride, in quiet pieces you don't notice missing until much later. The kids left like seasons do. First Mark with a duffel bag and a salute that wasn't a salute, then Emily with a stethoscope and a map full of plans. The house didn't echo. It settled. Dinner turned small. 2 plates, 1-word answers, the TV low like a third person we didn't have to impress. We still traded schedules, coupons, reminders. Our conversations shrank until they fit neatly in the memo line of a check. I reached for her hand less because I thought I didn't need to. She pulled away less because she thought I didn't notice. We both mistook quiet for peace. She started calling herself tired instead of lonely. I called it routine instead of drift. On Sundays, we nodded through hymns we used to sing. I watched the road like it was still my job. She watched the clock like it owed her something. Nights stretched. The house breathed. I told myself all marriages settle, like concrete, stronger, not colder, but concrete cracks from the inside first. One evening I caught our reflection in the dark window, 2 people side by side, facing out, not in. I realized we were speaking fluently about everything that didn't matter and forgetting the words for what did. We didn't fight. We didn't fix. We just faded. We stopped seeing each other before we stopped loving. And when love goes blind, the senses sharpen in ugly ways, especially the nose. I came home early on a Tuesday with a headache and a pocket full of Tums. The door clicked, the air stirred, and the first thing that hit me wasn't silence. It was a scent. Not detergent, not her vanilla lotion. A sharp, foreign cologne, the kind that lingers like a brag. It rode the living room like a stranger with his boots on the coffee table. Lisa appeared a beat late, hair smoothed too quick, smile clipped at the edges. "You're home," she said, like a question. I nodded and set my keys down next to it, the smell, anchored right where she sits to read. "Rosa dropped by," she added fast, a name tossed like a towel over a spill. My eyes went to the sofa fabric, then to the window, then to the faint imprint in the cushion that wasn't mine. I walked the room slow and let the scent tell me a story I didn't want to believe. Maybe a salesman, maybe a neighbor, maybe I was making a mountain out of a nose full of nothing. I chewed the doubt like gristle and swallowed hard. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just tired," she said, and looked past me. I told myself a decent man trusts his wife. I told myself decent men misread things when they're worn thin. Both felt true. Both felt useless. Danger doesn't always carry a gun. Sometimes it wears cologne. And once you smell it in your own house, you start noticing other things you wish you didn't. But that scent wasn't the only thing that didn't belong. I don't drink anymore. Blood pressure meds and age made that decision for me. So when I came home and found 2 wine glasses in the sink, red still clinging to the bowl like a stain that wouldn't admit guilt, I stopped breathing for a beat. One glass had a faint smudge, the shape of a mouth, not mine. "A friend dropped by," she said, casual as a weather report, sleeves rolled, dish towel moving too fast. Her smile bent a little, like a picture frame that won't hang straight no matter how you tap the nail. I lifted one glass, felt the chill still inside it. The house was quiet, but not innocent. Dishes stacked, the smell of a candle trying too hard. I checked the clock without meaning to. 5:42. I thought about how many evenings I'd come home to a clean sink and a tired laugh, and how tonight the sink told a different story. "Who?" I asked, softer than I felt. "Martha," she said, eyes slipping past me, aiming at the window like there was something important out there. I rinsed both glasses slow, watched the red spiral down the drain. My hands did the work. My head wrote questions I wouldn't read out loud. The second glass wasn't mine. And once you admit that to yourself, you start keeping time. Because secrets live on a clock. And this one was ticking louder every Tuesday and Thursday. The laundry changed before the weather did. Sheets into the washer every Tuesday and Thursday, even when the air turned gentle and the night stopped sweating through. The fabric softener got louder, sweet and heavy, filling the hallway like a cover story. On those days she dressed a little brighter, lipstick a shade bolder, hair ironed flat like a promise to be somewhere. She called it tidying up. I called it nothing, and took a seat at the edge of the bed that suddenly smelled like a department store. I worked 2 to 6 at the station. It's a small shift, paper heavy, a rhythm you can set your watch by. Tuesdays and Thursdays, the spin cycle hummed right after lunch, and by the time I grabbed my keys, the dryer clicked warm. I told myself she likes clean sheets. Who doesn't? But the regularity stuck to me, the metronome beat of it. Wash, rinse, replace, repeat. I started counting. I started noticing the way her perfume showed up thick on pillowcases, the way she hummed when she folded, as if the song could drown out the pattern. The house began to feel staged, fresh linen, safer lies. Then it lined up in my head so clean it hurt. Tuesday, Thursday, 2 to 6. The laundry schedule matched the hours I was gone, and once a pattern snaps into place, you can't unsee it. You look up, and you're ready to see what else lines up. Joe Miller caught me by the mailbox and spoke like a man telling bad weather to a farmer. "Seen that black caddy, Raylan? Slides in round 3. Slides out before 5. My shift. My hours." He rubbed his thumb across a grease line on his palm and added, "Ain't one I recognize." I nodded like it was nothing and felt it like a bruise. That afternoon, I stood at our front window and watched the street pretend to be ordinary. A shadow moved across the glass, long, polished, confident. The kind of car that thinks it belongs everywhere. I stepped outside slow, read the plate once, then twice. No hit in my memory. New to the neighborhood, familiar to the gut. The sun threw a clean reflection off the windshield, and for a split second I saw my own face on it, tired, older, not as sure. A man climbed out, tall, tailored. He didn't look around like a stranger. He looked past the house like he had a reservation. The name surfaced from somewhere I didn't want to visit. Rick Dalton. I couldn't place the introduction, but I knew the type. Expensive smile, easy promises, no receipts. The car idled, smug. I felt the pattern lock into place. Tuesdays, Thursdays, 3 to 5. My house, my hours, his car. The shadow of that car didn't just fall on the curb. It fell across my front door. And once a shadow gets inside your head, it starts turning doorknobs you thought were locked. I turned the problem over like a badge in my hand. Good men don't spy on their wives. That's the rule you say out loud. But rules are easy when nothing is at stake. The cologne in my living room, the 2 wine glasses in the sink, the Tuesday-Thursday laundry, the black Cadillac at 3 o'clock, all of it added up to a house I didn't recognize. What do you call a place where you don't feel safe? It isn't home. It's just walls. I sat at the kitchen table and argued with myself like a courtroom nobody else could hear. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was jealous. Maybe this was the part of marriage where you swallow doubt and choose trust. But trust isn't a spell you cast to chase off facts. Trust is earned, and lately my house was paying in counterfeit. I stared at the hallway where our wedding photo hangs, 2 kids with clean hope, and I wondered how many lies start with the word privacy. My job used to be keeping strangers safe. Now the stranger might be living in my calendar. I had 2 choices: keep the peace and go blind, or light a match and see what burns. But I didn't know the truth would burn this bright. I'm not proud of what I decided. I am certain of it. When a house stops feeling safe, you pick truth over comfort. That night, I started writing down what I'd need to find it. I did what every man swears he won't. I opened a new tab and searched for cameras small enough to disappear. Button-sized, quiet, no blinking light, no guilt bell. The listings felt dirty, discreet, no trace, remote viewing, words built for people with something to hide and people desperate to see. I picked one with clean specs and overnight shipping. My hands were steady on the keyboard, my neck wasn't. You could hear my heartbeat in the soft parts, throat, ears, the hollow under the jaw. The box landed the next day, light as a lie. Inside, a device no bigger than a dime, a cable, a card too cheerful about quick start. I downloaded the app that promises truth if you give it permission. It asked for my Wi-Fi like a stranger asking for my first name. I gave it anyway. Signal bars climbed. I walked through the house and mapped corners in my head, lines of sight, glare off glass, what a lens could steal without being seen. I checked for dead angles the way I used to clear rooms, patient, thorough, no heroics. A part of me wanted the setup to fail. Bad hardware, bugged software, any excuse, so I could say I tried and turn back. Another part kept going, because turning back is how men go blind. Settings saved, feed armed, ping, camera online, and just like that, truth had an address in my pocket. I started where life happens first, the living room. There's a shelf of family frames, smiles that belong to simpler hours. I tucked the lens among them, pointed low enough to catch the couch, high enough to miss the obvious. The room didn't change. I did. Then the kitchen, a small magnet strip for knickknacks. I slid the camera's face behind a tin rooster we've had since year one. Cute, harmless, always there. The hallway was next, the narrow throat of the house. A high corner, a modest angle, nothing dramatic, just a patient witness. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom longer than I should have. Sheets crisp, pillows fluffed, daylight soft as an apology. The last place a man wants to doubt. I told myself what I needed to. This isn't about catching, it's about knowing. I set the final cam on the bookshelf, spine to spine with a wedding album that can't update itself. The lens faced the foot of the bed, not the heart of it. A mercy no one will thank me for. I walked back to the kitchen and checked the feeds. Each room came up in quiet squares. No drama, just furniture and air, like nothing bad has ever happened in America. Signal strong, angles clean, battery good. For a long minute I listened to the house breathe. Not our house, this house. And in that stillness it hit me with the force of a confession. I'd given the walls a memory of their own. My home was looking back at itself, and soon it would show me something I could never unsee. She said, meeting a friend, like it was weather. Purse, keys, a peck that missed, and she was gone. The house settled into that tight quiet I'd learned to hate. I opened the app. 4 squares of my life breathing, living room, kitchen, hallway, bedroom, each one still as a held breath. I told myself I was only checking, not hunting. The clock on my phone crawled like a lame dog. 2:04, 2:07, 2:11. My breathing got heavier, loud in my own ears, the kind that makes your chest feel like it's wearing a smaller shirt. Sunlight angled across the couch like yellow tape. A dust mote drifted and looked guilty. I adjusted the volume and heard nothing, which somehow sounded worse than noise. The house was waiting. So was I. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Patterns don't lie. Neither do door hinges. I watched the deadbolt in the living room feed the way a drowning man watches the surface. 2:14. My thumb hovered above the brightness slider. I didn't blink. There's a special kind of fear that doesn't shout. It measures. It counts seconds. It remembers laundry schedules and red wine rings. It knows where cologne sits in fabric and where a Cadillac shades the curb. 2:15. The handle twitched. The door eased. Light from outside cut a hard line across the rug. I didn't breathe. The house did. And then the front door gave up its secret. She came in first, Lisa, shoulders tucked, eyes scanning in that quick, practiced way that tells you this isn't the first time. In the corner square of my phone, my own living room framed her like a witness. He followed so close his presence touched her before his hands did. Rick Dalton. Tall, pressed, a man who lives like life owes him extra. His palm found her waist like it belonged there. They moved together the way habits do. A kiss. Not long, not shy. Efficient, the kind that assumes privacy. Her head tilted the way it used to tilt toward me when the world was simpler. The door thudded shut and the lock turned with the confidence of a code. The sound landed inside me like a verdict. My eyes went to the couch, the cushion with the remembered dent, to the shelf of family photos now serving as cover for a lens no bigger than a button. Rick grinned at something she said. I couldn't hear it, but I understood the shape of it. A joke you tell when the man who pays the mortgage isn't expected home. 15 seconds. That's all it took. The honor I'd stacked year by year, born from long nights, roadside prayers, promises kept, cracked like thin ice. 15 seconds broke 40 years. And the worst part wasn't that it happened in my house. It was how easily they acted like it always had. But the footage didn't stop there. What I saw next changed the whole story. He set a Spanish red on my kitchen counter like he owned the countertop, pulled the cork with a practiced twist, not a shred of respect in it. To the future, he said, pouring deep, the wine catching the light like blood that learned manners. She lifted her glass without hesitation. Their fingers touched. The sound of crystal meeting crystal felt louder than a gunshot ever did to me. He glanced around, smiled at the neatness she keeps, then cut his eyes toward the living room like he was surveying a purchase. Your husband still doing that little desk job? He asked, not curious, dismissive. The word little landed like spit on my badge. Lisa laughed, quick, low, like a habit she didn't mean to break. He likes feeling useful, she said. And the health insurance is solid. Health insurance. 4 decades boiled down to premiums and coverage, a life measured by co-pays. I watched him top off her glass, watched her lips stain the rim the way I used to know they would. He talked about trips and coast houses and not settling anymore. She nodded like someone hearing the weather she wanted. The anger didn't roar, it calcified. I tasted metal. I felt old and too awake. That bottle wasn't just wine, it was a verdict with a cork. My honor, stacked slow over 40 years, sat on their scale, balanced against a benefits package. And in that moment I understood. They were toasting a future built with lumber stolen from my past. He came up behind her in the hallway like he'd been rehearsing the distance, close enough to claim, not close enough to ask. His hands settled at her waist. She didn't flinch. You deserve better, he breathed into her hair, a line polished smooth by practice. She leaned back just enough to tell me this wasn't new. My phone showed the long run of pictures on the wall, birthdays, graduations, a marriage frozen in frames that couldn't warn me. The hall narrowed, like houses do when they want to keep secrets. They moved with the confidence of muscle memory. Her hand brushed the doorframe. His laugh was softer now, private. The bedroom door swung, slow and certain, like a choice made days ago. I felt my fingers go numb around the phone, the kind of numb that makes you look for a place to put your hands and find none. He whispered something I couldn't hear. She answered with a tilt of her head I recognized from a lifetime ago. The door caught the light and began to close on everything I thought we were. My chest tightened until I could hear my own pulse through my teeth. I stared at the screen, at the edge of the frame, at the last sliver of hallway disappearing. Then I did the only merciful thing left to do for what dignity I still had. I turned the app off. I couldn't watch anymore. And the silence that followed had weight, like dirt on a fresh grave. I drove north on 75 until the lights smeared into white ropes and brake lights bled like open wounds. Plano slid past in streaks, billboards I'd seen 100 times suddenly reading like warnings, my mouth filled with metal. I took the shoulder too hard, gravel snapping under the tires, and leaned out into the heat to throw up what felt like hours. The wind off the flats was warm and pointless, a hand that didn't know where to pat. Back in the seat, I stared at my hands on the wheel. Old knuckles, old scars, a steering grip that used to mean control. Who am I when the house isn't mine, when the bed tells a story I didn't live in? I watched the sun drag its belly along the horizon, the sky going Texas red, the color of endings pretending to be beautiful. I tried a prayer and found only breath. I tried anger and found only shaking. Cars hummed by, strangers going somewhere on purpose. I had miles and no destination. I rolled forward, then stopped, then rolled again, like a man practicing surrender. The image of her tilt, his hand at her waist, kept looping, a reel I couldn't tear. Honor doesn't help you here. It isn't a tool. It's a mirror. And right then, all it showed me was a man with nothing useful to swing. Honor slammed into helplessness, and helplessness didn't move. I wiped my mouth. The road waited. So did the house. I found a gas station napkin in the console and scrubbed my face until the paper tore. The mirror gave me a man a decade older than this morning. I thought about calling Mark, then Emily. I pictured their voices catching, the questions they'd deserve to ask. I set the phone down. This wasn't their fight, not yet. I turned the wheel south. The lane felt narrow, like the road wanted me to miss my exit and keep running. I didn't. I slipped through the familiar turns, past the fireworks stand, past the car wash where we'd argued about nothing 2 summers ago. The neighborhood rose up, mailboxes leaning, sprinklers ticking, a dog bored with its own bark. I said the words out loud to keep my spine from folding. You think you know your wife, until the house you built together starts keeping secrets from you. Saying it made it real, and real made it necessary. I pictured the front door. I pictured her face trying to decide which version of the truth I'd swallow. I didn't taste fear anymore, just finality. I pulled into the drive. The porch light was off. The air had that late evening weight, heavy and close like a storm ogling the fence line. I pocketed my keys and felt the shape of my phone, the other witness, against my leg. I walked up the path slow enough to know I could stop, fast enough to make sure I wouldn't. Tonight, the truth was going to have a voice. You can only replay a lie so many times before it starts talking back to you. That night, it finally did. She was rinsing a plate that was already clean, shoulders set like a door wedged shut. I stood where the tile turns cold and said it plain. How long? No thunder, no speech, just the question that changes a house. She tried to step sideways, reach for small talk, but I didn't let her. I kept my eyes on hers the way I used to keep a car in my lane at 3 a.m., steady, patient, unblinking. Her hands shook, not much, just enough to make the water sound nervous in the sink. Raylan, maybe we should... How long? She looked down, then up, like the truth might be written somewhere safer than my face. The clock on the stove hummed, the fridge kicked on, the world kept pretending it didn't know us. She swallowed once, pressed her lips together like she could hold it in. A full minute stretched thin and mean. I thought about the cologne, the red rings in the sink, the laundry on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the black Cadillac that kept its own schedule. I thought about our wedding picture in the hall, the 2 kids who believed forever could be learned by heart. When she finally spoke, her voice was a small thing trying to be brave. 2 years. The words landed like a nail-driven flush. High numb. Everything after that had to be rebuilt or burned. Why? I said, not as a weapon. More like a man asking a doctor where the bleeding starts. She didn't rush to defend herself. She didn't reach for a villain I could punch. I feel invisible, she said, and the room tilted. I wanted more than fine, Raylan. Our friends travel. They buy beach weeks. They post sunsets. We maintain. I wanted to feel wanted. It would have been easier if she'd said it was lust or champagne or something with a receipt. Invisible is harder. There's no store return for that. I felt heat climb my neck, the old anger, the old pride, everything that says a roof and loyalty should be enough. I opened my mouth, then shut it, the way you do when you realize you're not ready to hear your own defense. She talked about the dinners we didn't take, the touch that turned into a pat, the way I came home carrying miles in silence. You were strong, she said. You were good. But I couldn't find my reflection in you. I looked at her hands and saw the years we'd both spent holding on to the rail instead of each other. The truth is unkind, but it doesn't lie. Routine can starve a marriage without raising its voice. We'd kept the calendar. We'd paid the bills. We'd confused quiet with peace. We stopped seeing each other before we stopped loving. And once you understand that, there's no going back to small talk. The only road left is forward, and it's all gravel. I slid my phone across the table like a badge I didn't want to show. The screen woke to 4 quiet squares. Then I tapped the one that mattered. Play. The room inside our room appeared. Our own couch, our own frames, her, him. She watched her face watch itself, color draining like someone pulled a plug. No spin left, no spare alibi, just images doing what words can't. I let the silence stand, then quoted back what I'd heard, each line laid out like inventory. Little desk job, I said. He likes feeling useful. The health insurance is solid. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth already had volume. She flinched at the phrases like they were hot wires. Her hands found the chair back and gripped until the knuckles shone. Raylan. I kept going, steady as a meter. The wine, the waste, the promise of a coast house. When he's gone. Her mouth opened, then closed, like she'd forgotten the words for sorry. On the screen, the hallway played again. The almost embrace, the door drifting shut. She stared until her eyes finally filled and spilled, the kind of crying that doesn't beg, just breaks. I turned the phone face down. The table felt cold through my palms. We had passed speech and landed in evidence. Images don't argue, they just keep being true. And once truth sits between two people, every sentence after it has to choose a side. I spoke first because someone had to. Some things, once they break, don't fix. The words weren't dramatic. They were a measurement. She nodded like a person checking a wound she already knew about. We can try counseling, she said, hopeful and hoarse, reaching for a word big enough to hold 2 years. I shook my head. Counseling helps cracks, I said. Not holes. The clock hummed. The refrigerator breathed. The house listened like it wanted a ruling. Tomorrow, I told her, we talk separation. Lawyer, accounts, the house. We keep it clean for the kids. Please, she said, stepping forward and stopping, like the floor had a wire across it. I never meant to. That's the problem, I answered. Meaning doesn't unmake doing. I wasn't cruel. I was done. I felt strangely calm, like the moment before a storm finally breaks and the pressure lets go. I pushed my chair back, not hard, just final. She reached for my sleeve and missed by an inch. That inch felt like a mile. I walked past the wedding photo in the hall, 2 young people convinced forever could be memorized, and kept going. The bedroom on the right, the living room on the left, the front door straight ahead. Behind me, her breathing hitched, then went thin. The kitchen door eased shut on its hinges with a soft, unremarkable click. That was the sound of the line snapping. When a man hears that sound in his own house, he stops being a husband and starts being a witness. Tomorrow would be paperwork. Tonight was the verdict. I took the photos first. Mark in a crooked cap, Emily in a paper crown from a birthday we couldn't afford but made work anyway. Frames off the wall, glass cool against my palms. History you can hold for a second and never keep. I slid them into a duffel like precious things traveling coach. Clothes next. Just enough to prove I wasn't coming back for a while. A couple of shirts, socks rolled tight, boots that had seen more of Texas than most men. I stood in front of the hallway collage, weddings, braces, cheap Christmas pajamas, and felt the sting you get when you smell a place you grew up and know you're leaving it. The house looked smaller. The memories looked big. Lisa was at the doorway, hands at her mouth, eyes trying to take back what they'd seen. I couldn't meet them long. Some looks ask for mercy you don't have. On the kitchen counter, I set my copy of the house key. No speech, no grand goodbyes, just metal on wood, a soft sound that said everything. I walked the rooms once, not to bless them, just to memorize the exits. At the threshold, I checked my pockets. Wallet, phone, children, spine. I took what money can't buy and left what money can't fix. Outside, the air felt wider than the house ever did. I closed the door, and for the first time in months, it stayed closed. We sat on my apartment balcony with coffee that tasted like cardboard and relief. Morning traffic stitched the distance. A lawn crew chewed up someone else's problems. Mark didn't ask for the play-by-play. He looked at my face the way soldiers read weather. What's coming, where to stand. He's a grown man, broad across the shoulders, but when he set his mug down and put a hand on my arm, he was also the kid who used to fall asleep in my chair after Little League. I figured, he said. 2 words that carried a lot of quiet miles. He didn't force advice or forgiveness, didn't offer a hero's speech. He did the simplest, hardest thing. He stayed. The weight shifted from one set of shoulders to two, and something inside me unclenched. "You don't need details," I told him. "You just need to know I'm okay enough to do the next right thing." He nodded like orders had been received. We talked calendars, lawyers, where the grandkid photos would live. No venom, no hunting for names. I told him there'd be days I'd feel older than I am, and nights I'd be fine for no good reason. He said, "I'm here." Not dramatic, not conditional, just there. Some silences feel like distance. This one felt like a handoff, the kind men make without ceremony, facing the same direction. Quiet masculinity, the kind that doesn't broadcast, held the line for me that morning. The phone buzzed in my hand like it didn't want the job. I called anyway. She answered on the second ring, voice already thin around the edges. Doctors know bad news before it speaks. "Dad?" Then the break came quick, a sharp inhale, and the kind of crying that tries to be polite and fails. How did this happen?" I could have given her the case file, dates, times, a black Cadillac that kept bankers' hours, but I kept my voice low, steady, something to hold. "Sometimes the outside lies," I said. "Sometimes a quiet house is just a muzzle." She asked a few questions the way surgeons ask before cutting, careful, necessary, not cruel. I answered what mattered and let the rest fall. "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Are you angry?" "Enough." "Is Mom okay?" I told her okay wasn't the right word and left it there. The line settled into breathing. I heard her pull herself together, professional muscle memory covering something raw. "When can I see you?" "Tomorrow," I said. "We'll sit. We won't rush." We picked a place with bad coffee and good light. Before we hung up, she whispered, "I'm sorry." "You don't have to be," I said. "Truth isn't your fault." When the call ended, my hand shook the way a man's hand shakes after a near miss on the highway, alive, aware, not proud. Truth is a needle. It stings, it wakes, and it keeps you from infection if you let it. Lawyers first. Paperwork stacked like shingles. Assets, timelines, signatures where a life used to be. We split things by columns. Her side, my side. I kept the retirement I'd earned mile by mile. She kept the house that no longer knew my name. When it came to dollars, I didn't haggle. I've seen too many men turn mean for scraps. I'm not selling pieces of myself for a better stereo and a tax line. The attorney asked if I wanted more. Spousal this, compensation that. I said no. He blinked like I'd misread the form. "You sure?" "I'm sure." He clicked his pen, and the room made the small, efficient sounds rooms make when people stop being married. Outside the window, someone parallel parked like their life depended on it. Maybe it did. I initialed here, here, and here. I thought of the photos I'd already packed, the duffel still on my chair, the key I'd set on the counter like a period at the end of a long sentence. She signed in a different room at a different hour. That felt right. Some endings don't need eye contact. When the last page slid toward me, I felt the weight of a badge I no longer wear. I pressed the pen down, neat and final. I don't bargain with dignity. I don't auction off my honor. I signed, stood, and walked out lighter and older, both at once, done with the math of division, ready for the harder work of adding a life back up. I bought a tree the size of a stubborn houseplant and set it by the window where the old house used to glow. 2 strings of lights, a crooked star, a handful of ornaments that didn't make the cut when we divided what counted. I baked cookies because muscle memory said so, then left them untouched on a chipped plate. Perfect circles with no story to tell. The apartment complex went quiet early, doors shut, blinds down, a parking lot of parked lives. Somewhere a neighbor's microwave beeped. Somewhere a dog gave up barking. I let the TV whisper, a holiday movie I'd seen 5 times, volume low enough to hear my own breathing. A video call came in. Mark at a base tree lighting, Emily between shifts, scrub top under a sweater that tried. We smiled too wide, sold each other the best lies good people tell. "I'm fine." "You look good." "Next year better." When the screen went dark, the room got honest. I sat with the kind of quiet that used to scare me. It didn't tonight. It drew a circle around what was left and said, "Start here." I thought about the house key I'd left, the photos I'd kept, the parts of me no judge can divide. I poured milk for no one and raised it to the window's black glass, a toast to whoever needed it. Loneliness doesn't kill. It teaches you how to live without excuses. January was waiting. So were the rumors that always find their way to a man sitting still. News travels in towns like ours without ever breaking a sweat. It showed up at the coffee counter, folded into "How you been?" and "Can you believe this?" Rick had a newer model now, a younger smile in a better dress. People said unfair in a way that meant predictable. The Cadillac parked somewhere else. The porch light at my old house turned on later, off earlier. Doors that used to swing open for Lisa started sticking. Invitations thinned. Folks don't say they're picking sides. They just rearrange chairs. I didn't feel vindicated. That's a cheap meal. It doesn't hold. I felt the slow grind of the same wheel that got me. Choices turning into habits, habits into outcomes, outcomes into stories other people tell when you're not around. She moved through town smaller, sunglasses on when it wasn't bright. The one or two friends who stayed did it quietly, like kindness is supposed to look. I caught myself hoping she had someone to check on her, and hated how human that sounded. Then I stopped hating it. You can be right and still not want the world to be cruel. That's a kind of strength they don't give medals for. Winter eased. The phone rang less. The apartment learned my steps. And just when I thought the dust had settled, life shifted its weight again. First my chest with a misfire, then a call from Emily, then another number lighting my screen with the kind of news that makes you measure breath. The wheel doesn't just turn, it tests. It started as a pinch behind the sternum, the kind you try to breathe through and blame on bad coffee. Then it pressed harder, a thumb on a bruise I didn't know I had. I drove myself to the ER because men my age do dumb math. How far, how fast, how bad. Fluorescent lights, a plastic bracelet, the beep that tells nurses who's winning. Mark showed up in uniform time, eyes scanning, jaw set, took the chair like a post. Emily arrived between shifts, scrubs under a jacket, questions lined up cleaner than the charts. Enzymes, EKG, family history, what's the plan? I let them talk to the white coats while I counted breaths and made small promises to no one in particular. If I get out of this, I'll call more. I'll sleep. I'll forgive what can be forgiven. They said minor event, said meds, said watch it. I nodded because nodding is free. Lying there, I stared at the tiles and pictured the miles I'd put on this heart. Sirens, scenes, arguments I swallowed, grief I pressed into quiet. I'd worn honor like armor for decades. But armor is heavy, and even steel rusts. Honor doesn't exempt me from death. I went home slower, pill bottle rattling like a pocket full of seconds. They said I'd be fine, but fate wasn't finished taking attendance. And just as I settled into that new caution, the other shoe dropped, from a number I still knew by heart. Her name lit the screen like a flare you don't want to see. I answered anyway. The first thing I heard was breath trying to behave. "Raylan, I need to tell you something." The words came out thin, like she was walking a narrow bridge over water she couldn't swim. "They found a lump. Early, they think. I don't know what to do." I didn't say karma. I didn't say any of the words a small man would reach for. I let the quiet hold us upright. When she finally asked, "Are you there?" I said, "Yes." And then the decision arrived without ceremony, the kind that tells you who you are when no one's watching. "I'll drive you to the appointments," I said. "All of them." Silence on her end, the soft kind that's half shock, half relief. "Why?" she whispered. I could hear a sink drip, a clock that hadn't been right in years. "Because I know those rooms," I said. "Because you shouldn't sit in them alone. Because some debts you don't pay with anger." I wrote down the clinic time, the address, the floor. I told the kids after. I packed a book and patience. At dawn, I pulled up to her curb, and she came out smaller than I remember, brave in a way that doesn't post well. I chose humanity over revenge. And once you make that choice, you find out what kind of man you've really been training to be. Hospitals have their own weather, too bright, too cold, air that smells like caution. I sat under it for hours, chair too short, knees too old, holding a paper cup that went from hot to apology. I watched the board that tracks surgeries like departures at an airport. Her initials flicked to "in progress," then stuck there, stubborn. I called Mark, gave him the facts, not the fear. I called Emily, let her doctor brain ask the right questions so my father heart didn't have to. Between updates, I learned the rhythm of that floor, the squeak of a cart, the slow step of a volunteer, the buzz that says a door is thinking about you. I kept expecting anger to visit. It didn't. What showed up was something simpler, duty without uniform. I read 3 pages of a book and forgot every word. I stood, sat, stood again, counted ceiling tiles, ran out, started over. Time got thin and mean, the way it does when you can't help. Then the door I'd been staring at all morning cracked open, and a surgeon I'd never met found my name without asking. She smiled, the small, earned kind. "We got it, early. She's going to be okay." The room exhaled. So did I. The cup buckled in my hand and finally gave up. I texted the kids. Good news. 2 words that weigh more than most vows. Relief isn't joy, it's oxygen. I took a full breath for the first time in years. Waiting gives a man time to sort through himself. I realized forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgetting is just a slow leak. Forgiveness is a border. You decide what crosses and what never will again. I wasn't coming back. Not to the marriage, not to the old quiet. But I wasn't going to live as a monument to the worst thing that happened to me either. I drew new lines. Respect in public, distance in private. The truth kept simple for the kids and grandkids. I wouldn't trade insults. I wouldn't inventory sins. I'd show up when needed and leave when staying became a lie. There's a difference between being kind and being convenient. I chose the first. People asked quietly if helping her felt like losing. It didn't. Revenge is loud and short. Dignity is quiet and lasts. Every time I drove her to a scan or argued with a billing department, I reminded myself, I'm not doing this because she earned it. I'm doing it because I carry my own name. Some debts you pay by refusing to become smaller. Some victories look like restraint. I won't rewrite history. I won't hand it the pen either. My compass is the same one I wore under a badge, pointed at true and keep walking. Forgiveness is my last act of strength. It doesn't reopen doors. It just lets me leave the hallway standing up. They pinned a medal to my jacket that didn't quite fit the way a uniform used to. Captain Harris read names the way a man counts pillars, and when he said mine, Raylan Brooks, the room paused like it knew the weight. I shook hands that meant it. The medal felt cool against the heat in my chest. Mark stood in the aisle in full uniform, chin up, boots that could have been mine 30 years ago. Emily held my granddaughter on her hip, the baby grabbing at the ribbon like she could pull the story closer. I saw Lisa in the last row, eyes red in a way makeup can't fix. She didn't wave. I didn't need her to. Some acknowledgments are better small. The clap of palms faded into that soft hum buildings make when they're holding people. I didn't think about open doors or shut ones, old betrayals or new boundaries. I thought about miles, wrecks avoided, families who got to eat dinner because I showed up. I thought about the long line of men and women who did the same and never got a ceremony. When the camera flashed, I didn't rehearse what to say. I just lifted my chin and let the words find their way out, simple and true. Honor still matters. The room agreed in the quiet way good rooms do. I tacked the moment to the inside of my ribs and took a steady breath. There was life to get back to, plain, careful, and mine. And keeping it steady would be the next proof I ever needed to give. We rebuilt a routine that didn't pretend to be a marriage. Calendars carried facts, not hope. I kept a standing Saturday with the grandbaby, sticky hands, loud toys, naps that looked like gifts. Emily sent photos without commentary. I answered with hearts and a joke that didn't overreach. Mark checked in the way soldiers do. Short texts, exact questions, presence behind every word. Lisa and I traded logistics in small, clean exchanges. Appointment times, updates, a heads up if a mutual friend's birthday was coming. No barbs, no archaeology. Boundaries stayed visible, like good fences. You can see the field beyond them, you just don't climb. If we crossed in a waiting room or pew, we nodded like neighbors. That was mercy. Ordinary and enough. I stopped telling the story like a wound and started filing it like a lesson. No late-night speeches, No new audience. I walked, slept, ate with intent. I took the long way to work and the short way home. The anger lost its job. The peace got promoted. When a memory tried to rewrite the present, I let it pass like weather. Noticed, not obeyed. We didn't drag each other back into the fight. We didn't audition for sympathy. We kept it civilized and stuck to the plan. Truth small and steady, kindness where possible, distance where needed. Real growth isn't loud. It's the click of a gate closing right, the lightness of a phone that doesn't buzz at midnight, the relief of clean sheets you washed because you wanted to. This was the life I could live with, and living with it every day was its own kind of win. A buddy from the force signed papers last spring. Another lost half a house and all his weekends. We meet at a hole in the wall off the service road. Burnt coffee, cracked vinyl, the clock always 5 minutes wrong. Men show up early and leave late. We talk weather, tires, property taxes. We do not talk about the moments that wake us at 3 a.m. The place hums with swallowed sentences. You can hear the ice machine better than you hear the word help. No one asks, "You okay?" Not really. We ask for oil change places and act like that's the same thing. Pride is a heavy coat in Texas heat. We wear it anyway. I watched a man stir sugar into coffee he wouldn't drink and knew what it meant. He needed to say one true thing and didn't know how. So I said mine first. "I'm not fine," I told them, "but I'm here." Heads lifted, shoulders loosened. A few nodded like a verdict had been read. We traded small truths, just enough to prove we weren't statues. Divorce, pills, empty houses that sound too loud. I don't want sympathy. I want witnesses. We shook hands on that. No fixing, just standing. The room felt lighter by an ounce. Sometimes that's enough to make it through Thursday. We're not bulletproof. We never were. We need each other. Once a man admits that out loud, he stops drowning quietly and starts learning how to swim. I told the truth about the cameras. Some folks called it wrong. "You don't spy on your wife," they said, like it's a commandment with no footnotes. I hear them. I also remember the cologne in my couch, 2 lipstick rings in a sink, fresh sheets on my days, a Cadillac idling on my curb. There's privacy, and there's a man not feeling safe in his own home. Those aren't the same storm. I didn't plant cameras to win an argument. I planted them to stop lying to myself. If I'd been wrong, I would have shut it all down and lived with that relief. I wasn't. That matters. The line I learned is this: respect is not blindness. Boundaries mean you lock the door against what would rot your house, from outside or in. People want easy rules. I've lived enough life to know rules meet reality and need a backbone. I keep my side clean. No publishing, no revenge porn, no parading pain for clicks. I faced the person who broke the trust and handled it like a grown man. Lawyers, decisions, distance. Did I like doing it? No. Would I do it again if the same danger walked my hallway? I would, and I'd own it the same way. Quietly, directly, without glee. Safety and trust must walk with truth. If one of them limps, the other two carry it, until you can stand your house upright again. When you strip a life down, you see the rungs you climbed. First is survival. The body fails in little ways. My chest hiccuped. Her biopsy cut a moon from fear. Pills in a day-of-the-week box. Sleep you earn. Then safety. The place that should hold you turned on me. A house is wood and rules until trust leaves. Then it's just walls. I rebuilt safety with locks you can't buy. Boundaries, daylight, proof over hope. Next is belonging. She said invisible, and I knew the hunger. Men go quiet, women go missing inside their own homes. I learned to ask for a chair at someone's table and to offer one back. After that comes esteem. Honor isn't applause, it's doing the right thing when nobody claps. I kept my name clean when it would have felt good not to. The last rung is the one you don't notice until you're standing on it. Choosing the man you are after the worst thing happens. Not holy, just consistent. I didn't get everything right. I got enough right to sleep. I make coffee at dawn, answer my kids honest, keep the story true and small. The latter holds. I've walked enough rungs to know who I am. That knowledge doesn't make pain disappear. It makes it obey. And with hurt behaving, a man can finally point himself forward. Most days I work 2 to 6 at the station. Paper, reports, rookies who think speed is skill. I move slower and hit the target more. After, I drive east to Lavon and throw a line where the water minds its own business. The wind off the lake doesn't fix anything. It just clears room to breathe. I talk to no one and somehow hear more. Sometimes I take the long way back and buy a Whataburger at 9:30, mustard and onions, fries hot enough to remind you you're alive. The kid at the window says, "Have a good one," like he means it. I eat in the cab and watch the parking lot work out its politics. Pickup trucks, a minivan, two teenagers laughing like life can't find them yet. Nights are a video call, Mark in a barracks glow, Emily between rounds, the baby drooling at the camera like I'm made of light. We say little and mean it all. I sleep with a window cracked, let Texas push the curtains. Morning comes honest here, sun up like a guarantee, birds arguing over nothing, the kind of quiet you don't have to defend. I don't chase big anymore. I tune small until it rings true. No secret schedules, no second glasses in the sink, no cologne I can't name. The life is plain, but clean. And clean is enough to walk into the last part of this story with my head up. So if you've ever built a life that cracked in silence, don't walk away yet. Because what comes after the breaking is where men are rebuilt. If you've walked this far with me, you know my headline. Honor still matters, not because it wins you trophies, but because it lets you look in a mirror without flinching. I learned the hard way that truth sometimes comes with a bruise. It still beats a beautiful lie. When a house stops feeling safe, you don't decorate. You tell the truth and rebuild on ground that holds. Forgiveness didn't change the past. It changed my posture. I didn't hand back my dignity to buy peace. I forgave to be free, to set the weight down and use both hands for the life in front of me. And to the men who sit quiet at diner counters and garage workbenches, stop going under in silence. Say one honest thing to someone who can stand it. We're not bulletproof. We need each other. Here's what I'm asking from you now. In the comments, write, "I survived it," if betrayal ever sat in your kitchen. Tell me how you stood back up. One sentence is enough. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I read every word. If this story hit you square, subscribe and stay. I've got more miles to share. Some hard, some clean, all honest. I'm Raylan Brooks. I chose truth over comfort, dignity over revenge, and a plain life I can carry. The door behind me is closed. The road ahead is open. I'll meet you there.